As one of the biggest voices in the Trackmania community, I often get asked to use my platform for the sake of good. On the Trackmania Reddit page, the user Slobodan brought up that Wirtual could use his reach for something useful for once, and expose such toxic behavior. Toxicity in Trackmania is something to be talked about, and you could probably write a book about it by now. This user is unfortunately completely correct. There's been a lot of bad things happening that nobody is talking about, and it shouldn't be that way. Recently, I was approached with information that, if true, would challenge what everyone in Trackmania believes to be real. A story so preposterous it would be easiest to sweep it under the rug and ignore it. But when I come across heavy information, I believe that players have a right to know what's been going on, and that I have a responsibility to talk about it. My goal as a creator is, and has always been, to share my passion and enjoyment for Trackmania with you, and I will of course continue to do so. But please know before we dive deeper into this topic, that this video is going to be very different from my other content. If you watch my channel for fun stories, this video is not going to be one. You see, the message I received was about the player Eddy Reising, a new talent in Trackmania Lagoon, who over the last 2 years climbed to rank 1 in the game. By many, he is seen as a player to be celebrated, but after researching this topic, I am no longer so sure. The message contained concerns that Eddy isn't who he's claiming to be. The more I dug for evidence to support this claim, the more I was astounded by what I discovered. Not only was there proof that this is true, but it also seemed possible that Eddy could have pretended to be other people in the community, including this Slobodan account on Reddit. The finds in this investigation have all pointed towards one player being behind the Eddy account, and that is Riolu, the biggest cheater in Trackmania history, and someone who hasn't had any communication with the community since 2021. This story is equal parts fascinating and unsettling, and uncovers some of the wildest behaviors I've ever seen on the internet. Fasten your seatbelts, everybody, because there is a lot to talk about. This is the story of Trackmania's biggest conman. Before we go on, I'd like to thank Arkes, DarkLink, Loupphok, Tomashu, Big Bang 1112, Kim, and Socramdavid. Players that, if it weren't for their help, this investigation would not have been possible. I would also like to say that this video is made with the main objective of informing the Trackmania community and documenting the events that have happened. Please do not attempt to contact or harass the players mentioned in this video. By publishing this information, we hope to achieve a better competitive environment in Trackmania, and any and all harassment would only counteract this effort. Thank you and enjoy. For those that don't know the backstory of Riolu, I will quickly go through it since it is important context for this video. In 2021, it was discovered that replay files in the game store the exact steering inputs a player does in their run. The community member Donadigo made a tool to visualize these steering inputs, so players could better see how the best drivers had steered the car in their records. In most cases, this tool worked perfectly fine, but when it was used to display the inputs in records driven by Riolu, it would show inhumanly quick and jittery steering inputs. This eventually led to a huge cheating investigation looking at records in all Trackmania games, and a detailed report later proved, along with admissions from some of the cheaters, that records with these inhuman inputs had been achieved by driving in slow motion, using Cheat Engine to slow down the game speed. This cheating method was incredibly effective, as it allowed the cheaters to have superhuman precision and reaction time, in a game all about shaving off hundredths of a second. And for the longest time, it was completely undetectable. Out of the cheaters exposed in the report, Riolu was by far the most severe. He used Cheat Engine to set records in Trackmania United Forever, Trackmania Nations Forever, Trackmania 2 Canyon, Valley, Stadium, Lagoon, Trackmania Turbo, and recently it was discovered that he possibly cheated in slow motion in Trackmania 2020 as well. During his years of cheating, he completely dominated the leaderboards. At one point, Riolu simultaneously held 62 out of 65 world records in Trackmania 2 Canyon campaign, and later 64 out of 65 in Trackmania Valley. He achieved these feats while holding rank 1 in Trackmania United Forever, and in 2019, he managed to clean sweep Trackmania Turbo, with 200 out of 200 world records on official maps at the same time. In 2015, he was invited to drive strong official target times for the Super Trackmaster campaign in Trackmania Turbo. The community at the time thought he was simply the GOAT. But as we would later learn, these accomplishments were all cheated, including the official target times driven for Nadeo in Trackmania Turbo. In total, it amounts to a decade of cheating, from 2011 to 2020, and it's estimated that he set thousands of cheated records during this time, making him by far the biggest cheater in Trackmania history, if not in all of video games. He was without a doubt also a good player. He proved that in live competitions and by setting world records on his live stream. But the most competitive and precise maps he would conveniently grind off stream. From 2015 to 2021, Riolu was building a career as a Trackmania live streamer, and by the time the cheating came to light, he had become rather successful. But when the report was about to be published, he had to face the sobering reality that 10 years of bad decisions were catching up to him. Rather than owning up to it and taking accountability, Riolu crashed out in a now infamous livestream, where, for the duration of an hour, he gaslit his audience, denied ever having cheated, and called parts of the investigation a witch hunt and an attempt at blackmailing. All of this backfired when the report came out, and people got to see the inputs for themselves, and it left many with an even worse impression that Riolu had continued to try to lie to the bitter end. Shortly after that stream, Riolu shut down his Discord server and presumably logged off all social media. It has now been almost 4 years since these events have happened, and Riolu hasn't been seen in Trackmania since. He never took any accountability for the cheating, and he never apologized. Most players thought he had decided to leave Trackmania behind and moved on to other things in his life, but as we will discuss today, that is not the case. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is because the person that contacted me is Arkes, a leaderboard moderator for Trackmania Exchange, and Arkes had strong reasons to believe that Riolu was now playing under the name Eddy Reising. Trackmania Exchange hosts the main leaderboards used in Trackmania United Forever. This website stores millions of replay files of players' records dating all the way back to 2008. Replay files contain a great deal of information. As mentioned, they contain inputs, but they also tell you what in-game account any run was driven on. In Trackmania, game accounts are called logins. A login cannot be changed after an account is created, and has to be unique from all other players. Replay files also store information about the display name a player used. It tells you the name of the skin they used, and the flag or avatar that they have selected. There's more things too, but they aren't relevant for this video. Based on these identifiers, Arkes had legitimate reason to believe that Eddy Reising wasn't who he was claiming to be. And in November of 2024, he messaged Eddy on Discord with his findings, in a conversation we will take a look at later. The final communication between the two is that Arkes asked Eddy to record a voice message to prove his identity, to which Eddy answered he didn't appreciate being talked to in a condescending way, as if he was some sort of criminal. He said he would provide everything Arkes requested just to get this weird topic off the table, but shortly after sending these messages, he completely vanished, and Eddy hasn't been seen in the game or on Discord for the last 3 months. As he was one of the best Lagoon players, it was odd for him to just leave without any notice. In January of 2023, Eddy made his first appearance in the Trackmania community, when he published his first YouTube video, a 7th place in the world on the official track Coast B1. Based on the aforementioned identifiers, we know this record was driven on the login Ponzor22. This track has over 30,000 players on the leaderboards, so setting a time in the top 10 is very respectable, especially for what seemed to be a brand new player. Over the next weeks, Eddy continued to post records in Trackmania United that went mostly unnoticed, as the tracks he competed on were rather obscure. But in April, he got inspired to play a different game, Trackmania 2 Lagoon, and his arrival on the leaderboards was impossible to miss. On the 29th of April, all the best Lagoon players were quite literally shocked when Eddy, on his first day of playing the game, managed to achieve 8 top 10 records in the world. And not only that, the maps he drove were the first 15 you encounter, and thus some of the most prestigious to hold the top records on. But Eddy made it seem effortless to climb as high as 2nd place out of 15,000 players on each track he hunted, all in the same afternoon. A streak of records like this from an unknown player was completely unheard of, and top players felt it just cannot be possible to get this good this quickly, since they themselves had spent years getting to their skill level. It was quickly assumed that Eddy had to be either a smurf or a cheater. Eddy explained that he had some experience from playing Lagoon in Trackmania Turbo on console, and that the way he was able to achieve all the records was from rigorous practice beforehand. He said he would rebuild the map into several smaller sections to learn it more effectively, as well as comparing replays to analyze mistakes, saying he made very quick progress, as he just had to copy his muscle memory from practice maps to real ones. And evidently, this method worked because his runs were almost immediately the fastest in the world. He also live recorded all his runs and included footage of the gameplay sessions in his video, making it significantly harder to get away with cheating. The same day as the spree of records, Eddy joined several community servers on Discord, introducing himself to other players and attempting to put their doubts to rest. This is also where he shares the first details about himself and his life. Eddy says he lives in Kazakhstan, has a full-time job, and mentions having a wife and a baby boy on several occasions. Over the summer of 2023, Eddy continued to set insane times. Out of 65 official tracks in the game, Eddy at the time held the world records on 19 of them. He accomplished this without even unlocking all the tracks yet, which you do by beating silver medal target times. These are ridiculously easy for someone driving at world record pace to unlock, but in 5 months of playing, he still hadn't unlocked them all. One time when asked why his display name looked so old school, Eddy explained that he had a background in playing Trackmania Nations Forever in 2010. And by checking the online database Trackmania, they could see that Ponzor22 indeed had online records all the way back in 2009. His backstory checked out, and it added more credence to his skill. But to many players, something still seemed strange about him. Members of a Discord server that Eddy frequented said Eddy would often join their voice calls and watch other top players livestream their attempts, but he would personally never talk, always citing having his microphone muted in order to not disturb his wife. Over the next year, Eddy continued to grind Lagoon, and slowly but surely became a trusted member of the community. And in the summer of 2024, Eddy decided to return to Trackmania United Forever. In the description of a video he uploaded on the 25th of July, he writes that he didn't like his old login, so he bought a new account, and from this point forward, he stops playing on Ponzor22 and makes Eddy A his new main account. In November of 2024, Arkes is browsing Trackmania Exchange profiles and stumbles upon the fact that Eddy uses 2 different logins. There isn't anything inherently wrong with having 2 accounts, but it could be a sign of account sharing or someone else driving records for you. Arkes was curious and searched the database to see if these logins showed up anywhere else on the site, and 3 replays from Ponzor22 appeared on an ancient profile, Ponzor. This profile hadn't been active since 2010. It had 4 records driven on the leaderboards, and 3 of them were driven on Ponzor22, making it seem likely that this indeed was Eddy's old profile. But the 4th and final replay uploaded to the leaderboards was driven on a different login. And not just any login, it was driven on Accelerator01, which happens to be the main account of Riolu.
Houston, we have a problem.
This discovery is the reason why Arkes eventually approached Eddy in Discord. When confronted about it, Eddy explained that the Ponzor22 in-game account was one he shared with a friend, and that he made Eddy A to have his own one. He says he never knew there was a TMX account with the same name, and whatever happened with it, he couldn't say. When asked why some replay files have the Germany flag when Eddy is from Kazakhstan, he says, "I can only guess it was one of the people I shared account with." And when asked who these friends or people are, he was unable to name any names. And as mentioned earlier, when asked to voice chat or to record a voice message, he didn't follow through. After this conversation, Eddy went inactive both on Discord and in-game, and hasn't been seen in the 3 months since. While it's weird to have a Riolu replay on a Trackmania Exchange profile linked to your in-game account, and to disappear just after being confronted about it, it's not enough to draw any conclusions from. And in order to find out who Eddy is, we would have to dig deeper. In December of 2024, Arkes messaged me with all of this information, and together with a team of players, we have tried to examine all the available evidence. Over the years, there have been many crazy theories about Riolu smurfing. Because of his swift disappearance, many found it hard to imagine he went from playing and live streaming the game every day to just immediately stopping. But all the theories so far have been completely wrong. The players Hobbit and Postito Paco have had claims against them of being Riolu's smurf, since they rapidly improved at the game around the time he went inactive. But both have had clear alibis that prove they couldn't be Riolu. There's also the controversial 92Bob account in Trackmania United Forever, a mysterious player that started achieving world records in June of 2021, just weeks after the cheating was uncovered. This account went from having 0 skill points to 165 million and achieving rank 1 on the leaderboards in just half a year of playing. And the community deemed it impossible for an unknown player to achieve such a feat, and figured it had to be a smurf account. 92Bob has been the most suspected Riolu smurf account since the cheating scandal, but there's never been enough evidence to conclusively prove who it belongs to. In this video, I intend to leave no room for doubt, not just about who is behind the Eddy Reising account, but also 92Bob, as with what we have discovered, we believe we have solved both mysteries. So let's start with the replays on Trackmania Exchange. When Riolu drove the run uploaded to Ponzor's profile, he was going for rank 1 in Trackmania United Forever. And in order to achieve that, you must obtain a lot of one particular resource, and that is coppers. The copper system is an antique part of Trackmania and not present in newer games. But back in the day, to compete on the in-game leaderboards, you had to pay 10 coppers per attempt in official mode. It is not possible to purchase coppers from Nadeo, but you receive 50 coppers for logging in each day, and you get 30 coppers each time you beat the gold medal on a track in official mode. This alone is hardly enough to sustain thousands of attempts at getting the best records, and many players don't bother with the in-game leaderboards for this reason. But for the players going for rank 1 in-game, it was essential to have a big bankroll of coppers to fund their grinding sessions, and farming copper competitions would have been a very important thing for this reason. The track where we found our Riolu replay on the Ponzor account just so happens to be one where the prize pool for the best times was 36,000 coppers. We decided to scan all of Trackmania Exchange for users that had Accelerator 01 replays uploaded, and we ended up finding 2 more profiles. One of them was Cyrox, which had a Riolu replay on the same track as Ponzor, uploaded within minutes of Ponzor and Riolu's main profile on the very same day. In total, Riolu received 8,000 coppers from this one competition. The run on Cyrox's profile had also been driven with Riolu's display name at the time, and then been modified to Cyrox before it was uploaded. There's also one other record on the Cyrox profile, and that one is driven on the login Hot Racer. This is also the login that Cyrox wants the coppers paid out to. Doing a lookup on the account Hot Racer shows that its current display name is Cyro, and downloading all the available replays from the in-game leaderboards shows it has used the nickname Camip as well. This closely matches the 4th and final TMX profile that has Riolu replays on it, a Yonex. Interestingly, we find that several of the thumbnails on maps uploaded by this user has the signature Cyro written on them. This user has 15 replays uploaded, and 13 of them are driven on the login xSamir. One is on the login Crashzor, and the final replay is on Accelerator 01. In the 13 replays driven on xSamir, the nickname Cyro is used 10 times, and Camip is used twice as well, closely linking xSamir and Hot Racer together. We also realized we were on the right track when we found a cheated run on the xSamir account, uploaded in May of 2011 to the track 3 Strange Days. This run was likely driven in slow motion and displays the same jittery inputs that can be seen in Riolu's runs from the cheating report. The xSamir account went inactive in 2011 and remained that way for many years, until in 2017 it reappeared in a competition called the True Talent Cup. In an old video of this competition from Trackmania streamer Spammy, we can see that xSamir, or Absol as the display name, is competing, and setting times so impressive that others in the voice call are surprised.
Dude, Absol, who the hell is this guy? I have no idea who is that guy.
Since Riolu was considered the best United player in the world at the time, many had high expectations to see him compete, but unfortunately he showed up too late to compete, and was only able to watch Spam stream. Riolu appeared in Spam's Twitch chat just after the mentions of Absol, and then continued to chat throughout the entire tournament. But if you pay attention to when he sends the messages, it is only between competition rounds. Because as we now know, he was the one playing as Absol undercover in this tournament. In 2018, the Examir account would take on a new identity, and we would officially get it confirmed that this account used to belong to Riolu, because that is also when Riolu gave this account to his friend Lars, so Lars could participate in other Trackmania United competitions. Riolu also cheated more than the one replay we discovered on this account, because when Nadeo scanned the leaderboards for cheated runs in July of 2021, Examir was detected to have 19 cheated runs, resulting in the account getting banned. If you now try to enter the login details Lars was given, you will be presented with this notice. With Examir confirmed to be Riolu's account, it likely confirms Hot Racer by proxy, as it has had the same display name multiple times. But now let's take a look at CrashSor, the third login seen on the profile Ionex, and see where that fits into the puzzle. The metastats for this login showed it was driving in the same zone as Riolu, in Dortmund, Germany, and a Google search of the display name Leandagu reveals that in 2015, someone suspected an account with the same name of cheating in Trackmania 2 Valley. These threads are the only time Riolu used the Dedemania forums, and he used them to defend the legitimacy of CrashSor or Leandagu's runs. CrashSor also ended up banned in Trackmania United Forever when the records were purged, having 16 cheated records in official mode. And interestingly, by analyzing surviving records from this account in Canyon, we can determine that it cheated with Cheat Engine, as the inputs are clearly inhuman there as well. CrashSor also had a few online records that survived the purge, and perhaps most interesting is that the account goes inactive for around 3 years, from November 2016 until the 17th of April 2020. It then returns to play a few rounds online on the server Alpina Public, and by some miracle, only 2 hours after CrashSor's return to the game, Riolu decides to play on the same server on his livestream, after half a year of online inactivity on his main Trackmania United account. The final account we discovered is Buzzkill22. Not only does this login have the same name suffix as Ponzor, but it also exists on the Dortmund leaderboards, and by downloading the replays from the account, we can see it uses the very same nickname as Eddy, strongly indicating that these accounts are owned by the same person. Both of the accounts also have slow motion runs on them, though they are insignificant and likely ancient records. Every profile on Trackmania Exchange that has a Riolu replay uploaded links back to him in clear patterns, and rather than being a very long list of coincidences, we see it most likely that all these logins belong to Riolu. It might seem bizarre to have this many accounts in the game, as you would hardly find time to play on all of them, but once you see it through the lens of copper farming, it makes perfect sense. If you buy a fresh account and beat the gold medal on every track available in the campaign, it can net you over 12,000 coppers, as well as increasing your daily gains by 50. Another strategy used by players is to buy a previously owned account. These can often be found for cheaper on eBay and could have a treasure trove of unused coppers, as described here by the player Techno, who is notorious for having around 50 accounts in Trackmania United Forever, and has managed to accrue over 3 million coppers this way. Anyway, if these other logins belong to Riolu over the years, then it is very likely that Ponzor22 now does as well. But let's remember that a lot can happen in 14 years. In the same way that Riolu gave the Examir account to Lars, Lars could have passed that account on to someone else. And though Riolu matches the profile of knowledge and skill needed to be fake Eddy, it is still technically possible that someone else could have gotten this account. The most satisfying answer to a mystery is one that leaves no room for doubt or speculation. And in order to achieve that, we have to analyze more replays.
The numbers, please. What do they mean?
In the next phase of the investigation, we scanned all available replays on the official in-game ladder. To do this, we got the help of Trackmania genius Tomashu. After downloading all replays from logins related to Riolu, Tomashu crucially realized that records driven in official mode actually have a date and timestamp of when they were registered on Nadeo servers, something that nobody in the community knew up until then. Another important detail is that if a player had downloaded the competitive patch, information about which specific input device they used would be saved in the replay file. This was commonplace knowledge, but it was previously thought that once a record is submitted to Nadeo servers, this information would no longer be written into the replay file. But Tomashu discovered it's actually still there. These two data points could be used to identify patterns between several logins, and since nobody knew this information existed, they never thought to shield themselves against it. One question that came up frequently in the investigation was, if Riolu is fake Eddy, then who on earth is 92Bob? It seemed unlikely that Riolu would find the time to smurf on several accounts at the same time, but the timeline of known activity from 92Bob and fake Eddy lined up surprisingly well. 92Bob first appears just after the cheating scandal, and remains active from June 2021 until December 2022. At that point, the account had reached 200 million points and stopped playing. Shortly after, in January of 2023, fake Eddy posts his first YouTube video and proceeds to stay active until October 2024, where he drove his last known record in Trackmania Lagoon. And 1 week later, 92Bob returned to Trackmania United forever. Though the investigation was originally focused on Eddy, these new data points made us take a much closer look at 92Bob as well. When we compared the timestamps of activity between the logins we knew Eddy had access to and 92Bob, an unbelievable pattern emerged. It starts on the 25th of September 2021, when Buzzkill becomes active again after almost 10 years of inactivity, and rapidly starts setting records. When looking at how much time passes between each record, it's sometimes as little as only 30 seconds, making it clear that the player could only be doing one thing: farming coppers by beating gold medals. And shortly after this streak of records from Buzzkill concludes, 92Bob sets a new personal best. On the 24th of October, the same thing happens. On the 31st of October, the same thing happens. Shortly after these personal bests from Bob, the Ponzer22 account becomes active again as well, and farms coppers in the same way for 3 hours. And after the harvest, Bob again sets a new personal best. This pattern of the stolen Eddy accounts farming coppers and Bob setting a new PB can be seen again and again throughout the end of 2021. In 2022, the pattern continues, only that now 92Bob and the Eddy accounts have started using the competitive patch, which contains data about the input device used. And wouldn't you know it, they also use the same controller. The way this data is saved is by looking at the vendor ID and product ID of the USB devices connected to the game. When looking up the vendor ID that appears in Eddy and 92Bob's replays, it shows he's using a controller from Big Ben Interactive Limited. Looking at the Wikipedia page of this company shows that Big Ben has rebranded to Nakon. On the 8th of March 2021, Riolu posted about receiving the asymmetric wireless controller on Twitter, as Nakon were one of the main sponsors of his esport organization. To figure out if this was the controller with the same product ID as we see in 92Bob and fake Eddy's replays, I decided to purchase one, making sure to get one with the same packaging. I plugged it in and drove a replay, and wouldn't you know it, it has the same product ID. Vendor 146B, product 609. If both logins were using a standard Xbox or PS5 controller, it would be easy to write this off as a coincidence. But Nakon is a rather niche brand, and seeing both these logins driving the same map, same day, 10 minutes apart with the same controller is very suspect. When looking at the timestamps, we also assumed that when there were gaps in the data, Bob was likely farming coppers via other accounts, and we came up with a smart way of identifying them. You see, there is one more way of gaining coppers in Trackmania United forever, and that is by logging in to the Mania Zone forums once a week. This gives you a bonus of 100 coppers. Since the profile page of each player has a timestamp for when they registered on the forums and when their last sign-in was, we came up with the idea to look for registrations and recent sign-ins that matched Bob and fake Eddy. The imposter made this work rather easy for us, as he decided to register most of the accounts minutes apart on the same day. On the 17th of August 2024, we see the Eddy accounts Ponzor and Buzzkill register on the site, preceded and followed by a horde of accounts in the same 5 minutes. Keep in mind that activity on these forums is completely dead, and I want to be exceptionally clear that a series of logins and last active timestamps matching this closely several weeks in a row doesn't happen by accident. The imposter was a bit more careful with 92Bob, as that account doesn't register on the forums till the 10th of October. But Bob's recent sign-ins match exactly with some of the accounts spotted earlier. We now had a list of 15 accounts, all logging in at the same time on the forums to collect coppers and using the same controller that we know Riolu has. If having one identical controller wasn't rare enough, Fake Eddy and 92Bob and 2 other copper smurfs can be seen with 2 matching controllers connected, the Nakon controller and an Xbox 360 controller, both plugged into the PC when their records were set. Bob, Joe Urch, and Ludosflood did this a few hours apart, whereas the fake Eddy ones with this combination happened a few months earlier. Another strange account on this new list was Graphics72, since this is an account that Techno had told me earlier used to belong to him. I decided to contact Techno about it, and interestingly, Techno said he at one point gave the password of Graphics72 to Riolu in order to smurf all 9 together, and when he tried to connect to it now, he no longer had access to it. Logging in just one time on someone's account in Trackmania United Forever is enough to be able to hijack it, as you can change the email address on the profile page, and then request a new password sent to your new email address without any 2-factor confirmation from the old email. Techno was able to confirm through his backups that he had the password to Graphics72 until early 2020 at least, but it had been changed between then and now. But apart from just using these accounts to farm coppers, another pattern that emerged is that these accounts would all routinely flood specific leaderboards with records. Sometimes it was just doing one run on each account, minutes apart. Other times it was an attempt at taking over the top 10 on a track with as many accounts as possible. Doing this completely ruins the competition on those tracks, and it got several people in the community to wonder who was doing all of this. Many wrongly assumed at the time that these accounts belonged to BlackQ, a notorious troll in Trackmania United. BlackQ said he had no knowledge of these accounts, and BlackQ is confirmed not to be 92Bob. He did, however, pretend to be 92Bob at one point as an attempt at getting a Nadeo employee to delete all of 92Bob's records, but he was unable to show he had ownership of the account, and thus nothing happened to Bob's records. This story is corroborated from the Nadeo employee. After much frustration with Bob being anonymous, he also notoriously and reprehensibly tried to figure out 92Bob's location by sending him an IP address grabber, disguised as a YouTube link via the in-game mail system. But fortunately, Bob never clicked on the link. This action was a stretch too far and has been shunned by the entire community, but it also serves as great proof that BlackQ isn't Bob. Someone so hellbent on figuring out Bob's identity wouldn't themselves be behind the account. And before you get your tinfoil hat on, analysis of BlackQ's replays has also shown he uses a different controller. He has live streamed himself playing at the same time as Bob has achieved records, and he doesn't have any link to any of the copper farming accounts. So no. Out of the accounts that have been flooding the leaderboards, the strangest of them is General Cool. On the 12th of January 2022, this account started playing official mode, both farming coppers and also setting very strong times on select tracks. Once you set a record in the top 10, your display name in-game is shown to everyone. The inexplicable thing about General Cool is that the display name this account was using was the full real name of the player Misu, and whoever was doing this was essentially doxing him for no apparent reason. Misu's real name was not known in the community, only by his closest friends that he had added on Facebook, and he couldn't understand why any of them would do something like this. Other players were also lost for reasons why anyone would do this. At the time, it was wrongly assumed that the player behind these accounts was, again, BlackQ, since he would often try to troll Misu. And for a period, BlackQ did things like driving records with an exact copy of Misu's in-game display name, causing a lot of confusion. So it wasn't unthinkable that General Cool could be him. But in April of 2022, BlackQ felt sorry for trolling the community, and requested that Nadeo delete all the records on the accounts he owned. Nadeo followed through and deleted all the records from several logins, like the logins Nevria, Bella Machina, and Fraser. But the General Cool account was never purged. In 2023, when Black U was asked why he never requested General Cool's removal, Black U said it was because the account wasn't his. Misu says, "Who else would dox me on this random map?" To which Black U responds, "I have my limits, dude. Trolling, sure, but not doxing and shit." And in this instance, we actually know it wasn't Black U. The evidence points to that whoever is behind the fake Eddy accounts, Buzzkill22 and Ponsor22, is likely the one who doxed Mizu. On the 3rd of April 2022, the General Cool account can be seen in a cluster playing the exact same map as Buzzkill22 and the other copper farming accounts, only minutes apart on the same controller. The same thing also happened 1 month earlier, in March of 2022 on the track Coast C4. Here General Cool is playing in the same cluster as Ponsor22, where all of the accounts set records minutes apart from one another. This incident is before any of the accounts used a competitive patch, so we do not have any controller data for that streak. But the same thing happens 2 years later, in September of 2024, when General Cool, together with Buzzkill and many of the other copper farming accounts, drive one run after another on AO8 Endurance, again on the same Nakon controller. General Cool's first registration on the Mania Zone forums happens 4 minutes and 5 seconds after Ponsor, and 2 minutes and 56 seconds after Buzzkill, and his most recent sign-in at the time of making this video happens on the 30th of January, which is 1 minute and 36 seconds after Buzzkill22's most recent sign-in. On the 30th of January, we also see several other accounts log in within the same 5 minutes, and especially of note are the accounts Ludoslud, Christian Klosa, and Graphics. For Graphics and Christian Klosa, their sign-up dates matched within minutes of Ponsor, Buzzkill, and the lot, and their last active timestamp matched within minutes of 92Bob on the 5th of January. As mentioned earlier, Techno doesn't have access to the Graphics account anymore, and when asked about this specific forum sign-in, he said it wasn't him. To try to claim that all these things are a coincidence would be foolish. We can, based on all these factors, conclude that the person who is behind the fake Eddy account and the 92Bob account is the same person who is currently in possession of the General Cool account now. Most strongly evidenced by these accounts playing minutes apart on the same controller in April of 2022. When it comes to establishing exactly who was using the account to dox Mizu in January of 2022, I cannot say for sure, especially since doxing is considered a crime, and I don't want to open myself up to a defamation lawsuit. But that being said, if we were to entertain a scenario, what hypothetical reasons could Riolu have to dox Misu? Well, shortly after the cheating scandal in 2021, Misu changed his profile picture on Twitter to a picture of Riolu, and has kept that as his profile picture ever since. On the 30th of July 2021, he posted what at a glance could look like a twit-longer apology from Riolu, in order to troll the community. And in December of 2021, only weeks before the doxing happened, Misu also posted on Twitter expressing a dislike for Riolu. But that's just one of many possible scenarios, I'm sure. Luckily, Nadeo has greater tools available, and they should be able to figure out who the doxer is by checking the hardware ID of the account. Hardware IDs are like the serial numbers of your computer, and uniquely identifies your exact computer to the game. The doxer, without a doubt, has other active accounts in the community, since nobody joins a game and is casually able to drive top 10 times, while at the same time randomly deciding to dox a community member. By matching General Cool's hardware ID at the time against other accounts, Nadeo should be able to conclusively prove who the doxer is. And I hope they take this as seriously as it should be taken, as this relates to every Trackmania player's online safety. That strange incident aside, the final piece of information we could gather from these new accounts was the car skins they used. All replays in Trackmania contain the file name of the car skin that was used in the record. Even if the skin might not load for you, it is still saved as a name in the replay file. Digging deep into the archives, we found a Twitch stream from Riolu where he is playing Trackmania United Forever in 2020, and browsing through the pages of his car skins. From the skins that can be seen, many are default ones. Others are very popular ones that can be downloaded on a website called Mania Park. But he also has some very rare skins. Skins that there are no publicly known downloads for. We wrote down the names of all the visible skins from that stream and then compared them to the file names we can see in the replays. On 92Bob, he is exceptionally careful to only drive with skins that are available by default. But on the Smurf account, he is far more careless and uses many of the very same skins we saw Riolu had locally downloaded. For example, Ludoslud, the account with the same forum sign and timestamp as 92Bob, used the skin Bay Technoface. When asking Techno about this, he said he created the skin in 2011 and shared them with a couple of friends at the time. This is a skin Riolu had in 2020, but there has not been a public available download for it in well over a decade. The other most interesting find is the 1 Alpine car skins. The special thing about these is that they were initially created for a snow car mod in Trackmania 2. After Riolu played this mod and liked the skins, he personally requested Florentius, the skin creator, to make them compatible with Trackmania United Forever. Florentius never shared the skins with anyone else, so the only way someone else than Riolu could have gotten them is if Riolu sent the link to them. 6 out of the copper farming accounts we discovered are using these 1 Alpine skins. It is of course very curious that during the time General Cool was actively doxing Mizu, he was setting some records with the 1 Alpine Rainbolt skin. But there's one final detail we discovered that completely seals the case beyond any and all doubt. And it is the fact that Eddy Reising is a real person. You see, when we took a closer look at the Buzzkill22 account, we discovered another login closely related to it, Gabriel996. This account built several tracks together with Buzzkill and uploaded them to a Trackmania Exchange profile. The email address registered on this Trackmania Exchange profile crucially had Gabriel's full name written. With this information, I contacted Gabriel on social media, and via his friends list, I found the actual Eddy Reising. I sent them both a shot in the dark message, and to my surprise, both answered. Up until this point, it had been assumed that Eddy Reising was a completely fabricated identity. But after my first few messages with him, it became clear that the reality was much more disturbing. Real Eddy's English isn't the best, but he said his in-game name in Trackmania used to be Ponzor, and confirmed it was his account after seeing a screenshot with the colors. I asked him what he knew about Accelerator01, Riolu's Trackmania account that drove a run uploaded to his profile, and to my disbelief, he said he's known Riolu since they were kids. Eddy said they hadn't spoken much after he quit Trackmania around 2010, but that back in the day, him and Riolu used to do parkour together daily, and when the weather was bad, they would talk on walkie-talkies and play games together. He said Riolu is the one who introduced him to Trackmania and they built several maps together. He said it was possible Riolu had driven some of the runs on his account and called one of the runs shown to him too good to have been driven by himself. Most importantly, Eddy confirmed that Eddy A was not him, meaning that whoever was using his account and his name now was impersonating him, without Eddy's knowledge or consent. The real Eddy did claim ownership of Ponzor22 and Buzzkill22, and Gabriel could corroborate this in my conversation with him. Gabriel said Eddy was one of his school friends. He said he had played Trackmania in real life with Riolu as well, but that he hadn't seen him for about 15 years. Gabriel said that him and Eddy both at one point logged into Riolu's PC, and that, quote, "We definitely drove time races because Riolu was very good and could help us." Gabriel also said Eddy and Riolu used to be neighbors, and elaborated on having times driven for him, and thus giving Riolu access to the accounts. This discovery was truly shocking to me. With this, the entire Eddy Reising identity in Trackmania can conclusively be called fake. Something that we already suspected, but not in a million years did I expect it to be based on the identity of a real person, and much less a childhood friend of Riolu, who Riolu introduced to Trackmania. After analyzing all available data from all of these different sources, the cold hard evidence all points in one direction. It is no coincidence that all of these logins use the same niche controller Riolu was given by a sponsor. It is no coincidence that the timestamps of records driven by these accounts match up so closely, that the Mania Zone registration date and last active dates between them match up perfectly, and that many of the accounts use the same rare skins as we see on Riolu's PC. And when combined with the fact that whoever is behind the fake Eddy account must know certain things about the real Eddy, and that it just so happens that the real Eddy and Riolu were childhood friends playing Trackmania together, that it just so happens that the real Eddy has logged into his Trackmania accounts on Riolu's computer, and the fact that whoever is fake Eddy and 92bob must 1. Be a world-class player, but 2. Have some reason to play anonymously, we believe all in all exhaustively proves beyond any reasonable doubt that the person behind fake Eddy, 92bob, and all of the following accounts is Riolu. I'm sorry if you feel it has taken way too long in this video for me to say that, but I didn't want to leave any room for doubt and to leave any stone unturned. I thought it's better to present all the available evidence rather than jumping to that conclusion prematurely. I would urge Nadeo to verify these findings by themselves by checking and identifying information I do not have access to, such as the hardware ID of these accounts. But I suspect that Nadeo already knows most of these things. They at least know the identity of 92bob since late 2021, and have chosen not to share it with the community, only stating that since 92bob's records are legitimate, they will allow him to compete on the leaderboards. The earliest 92bob records we have documented were driven in June of 2021, only 1 month after Riolu was exposed for cheating. My main goal with making this video has been to present all the information we discovered to the community. But while doing so, I also want to interject my own opinion here, that I personally think allowing Riolu to immediately return to competing after 10 years of cheating with no suspension is disgraceful, especially to all the Trackmania players that have put great effort and pride towards their legitimate accomplishments. I don't necessarily think Riolu has to receive a permanent ban, but giving no punishment at all apart from having to create a new account really makes it seem like they don't care for the leaderboards. Especially when he cheated on a scale that affected every leaderboard in every major Trackmania game in the last 18 years. It's been close to 4 years since the cheating scandal, and not once in those 1300 days has he taken just 1 day to apologize. Instead of taking the time to make one apology video, he has found the time to make 65 Trackmania videos on the fake Eddy YouTube account. And instead of writing one apology to the community, he has written hundreds of YouTube comments on the fake Eddy YouTube account, while also infiltrating communities on Trackmania United and in Trackmania Lagoon under a new name. Before we go on, I want to make it clear that the actual investigation part of the video is finished. The next portion is merely an opportunity I'm going to use to talk about the toxicity that is plaguing Trackmania. When trying to figure out if Riolu was driving on the Eddy accounts, we looked at all the comments written by fake Eddy on YouTube, and it has led to some peculiar findings. Through this process, we noticed 5 other accounts that would write comments on the same Trackmania videos as Eddy, sometimes only minutes apart. Videos on niche channels that only receive a couple of hundred views per video. These accounts all interact in the same threads, they use the same language, they have a strong dislike for the same players, and they reply to comments on old Riolu videos, shutting down people who mock his cheated records. On the list of accounts, you might recognize some of the names. We have Slobodan Medara Donovic, Swag, Cyro, and a username I'll only be pronouncing as Urine. These accounts have left over 1,000 total comments on Trackmania videos in the last 4 years, and it is far too much data to analyze every comment here, nor is it the actual point of this video. But I'll share some short details about each account and how they link back to the imposter. Starting with Cyro, I mentioned a very similar username earlier on in the video, in the spiderweb of accounts associated with Riolu. On the following YouTube channels, Cyro has written 5 comments, and 3 of them are within 1 minute of fake Eddy commenting on the same channel. One of them in particular is a rather depressing comment, and as you'll see later, this is unfortunately a pattern. Cyro can also be seen as a user in Trackmania Discord servers, where he most actively discusses 92bob and Nico. As a last anecdote, when I asked Nico if he knew anything about the Cyro98 account, he told me he used to suspect that it's Bob. Nico would often stream himself grinding tracks in Discord, and Cyro would watch, muted in the voice call. Anytime Nico set a world record, Bob would contest them quickly afterwards. But as Nico says, perhaps it's just a coincidence. Next up is Slobodan Medara Donovic. The first time I heard about this account was because Nico messaged me and said he'd repeatedly been sent hateful comments by them. And from what I've seen, this account is one of the most toxic in the entire community. Normally I wouldn't bother wasting my own energy or yours on an anonymous hate account like this, But since it is specifically Slobodan Medada who wrote the comment I showed at the beginning, telling me to use my platform to expose toxicity, I figure it is warranted to take a look at some of the things he said. Slobodan Medada has the same activity patterns as Cyro and Eddy, writing YouTube comments minutes apart from fake Eddy several times. This account has gone out of their way to reply to comments on ancient Riolu videos 9 times, shutting down comments that make fun of Riolu for cheating. And like Cyro, Slobodan Medada is also very pessimistic about Riolu's whereabouts. The Reddit user Puchus had long ago noticed that the Slobodan Medada Reddit account had 2 posts from 2013 where Slobodan shared videos from Riolu's YouTube channel, but these posts have since been deleted. After messaging him about it, he was able to track them down. On the 13th of June 2013, Slobodan shared the video of Riolu's world record on Canyon AO1 on the r/gaming subreddit, and on the 7th of July, he shared a video of Riolu's world record on Valley AO1 on r/gaming videos. Slobodan also left 2 now deleted comments on the first post, urging those who saw it to subscribe to Riolu's channel. It is of course possible that Slobodan was a super fan of Riolu and wanted more people to see his fantastic channel, but then one might wonder why he would delete the posts. Slobodan's comments on Reddit after the cheating scandal are often about 92bob, and as Puchus noticed, predominantly about defending Riolu in several instances. And when I made my video about 92bob last year, Slobodan wrote a grand total of 56 comments. It is first one streak of 15 comments on the day the video was posted, before returning one evening, almost half a year later, to drop another 41 comments. In a Reddit post Slobodan wrote on the 27th of May, he argued that BlackQ should be permanently banned from the game, stating in his post that, quote, "In my opinion, he should be banished forever and none of his records, legit or not, should be uploaded anywhere. BlackQ has had enough chances to redeem himself within the community, and has spat on every chance he received sooner or later. The community should stop welcoming such individuals that are not contributing anything but a nothing burger. I believe this sends a really bad signal to players within the community, but also the people outside of the Trackmania bubble. Certain lines simply shouldn't be crossed, and patterns of behavior shouldn't be enabled, and I believe BlackQ is one of the very few players, if not the only ever in Trackmania existence, who deserves such a treatment. In order to avoid a lawsuit, which Slobodan did threaten in one of his comments, I will state it clearly that we don't know who is making the comments on the Slobodan Medada accounts. But hypothetically, if it does turn out to be Riolu, then I wonder if he would extend that line of thinking in the post to himself as well, or if this line of logic only applies to those who wronged him and not those he himself wronged. The last thing I'll say about this is that there just so happens to be a post in 2015 on the Cheat Engine forums from a user with the same exact username. The post reads, "Hey, I've stumbled across a little game on Uplay which I was trying to mod with Cheat Engine for single player purposes only. To make it work, I obviously have to hook the process to Cheat Engine, so I'm wondering if Uplay or Steam might get behind it, aka recognize it, and flag my account for hooking third-party tools to the game. Any information on that?" The timing of this post as it relates to Trackmania is peculiar, since just 2 weeks earlier, on the 16th of June 2015, Ubisoft Nadeo unveiled their new game at E3, a Trackmania title that as a PC player would only be available on Uplay. In a reply in the responses he was given, he says, "Thankfully it's not a Valve game, so I'll give it a try soon. Make of that what you will." We have talked a lot about the YouTube comments now, and I don't want to drag out this part for longer than it has to be. But taking a quick look at the last 2 accounts on the list, they have also alluded to Riolu being gone. They post streaks of negative comments towards Nico, BlackQ, Kimura, Spammy, myself. They post comments on Riolu's old videos defending him. In October of 2021, shortly after Bob began farming coppers on all accounts, both of these accounts leave YouTube comments begging a top player for coppers. Uren just so happens to have created their account 1 day apart from Slobodan in 2014, and Swag created his account only 3 weeks after that. Then they don't comment on any of the Trackmania channels we see until 2021, where they all converge and repeatedly comment minutes apart from each other with the same opinions and the same language, too many times to be a coincidence. With all of these things in mind, it can therefore be argued that these comments on these accounts are written by the same person. And as for who that person is, Since all these accounts connect back to fake Eddy, I believe it is most likely Riolu writing these comments. I am officially exhausted, and it's understandable if you are too. Looking at all of this and confronting all the nasty things has made this a very uncomfortable video to create. I thought a lot about if the video should even be made, and after contemplating it, I landed on yes, since the community deserves to know and see these things for themselves. I thought about how to make it in the best way possible, and realized that with a subject matter this heavy, there's no good answers. I could summarize the video in 30 seconds, saying, we discovered that rather than apologizing or taking accountability, the biggest cheater in Trackmania began playing on an anonymous account 1 month after being exposed. Nadeo knows this and chose to keep the community in the dark about it with no further explanation. We know Riolu further infiltrated multiple communities, using the identity of his childhood friend without that friend's consent or knowledge, possibly also using the general cool account to dox a player who strongly disliked his cheating, and possibly leaving 3 years worth of hate comments towards his main opponents on anonymous YouTube accounts, that all link together in a spiderweb of matching activity, patterns of behavior, and language used. But without systematically going through the evidence, who's gonna believe all of that? The downside of making the video this long is that it inevitably could lead some people to think, it's just records in a game, lol, why are you taking it so seriously? All in all, I did the best I could. I made this video because I truly care about the game, and I wanted to continue being a friendly and enjoyable environment to compete in. In order for that to happen, I really count on Nadeo to consider doing the following. I hope Nadeo can check the information only they have access to, such as hardware ID, to verify who has been flooding the leaderboard with the following accounts, and that they can ban these accounts and or the person doing it from the leaderboards. Next, I want Nadeo to figure out who doxed Misu on the general cool account, and I sincerely hope they take this case seriously as it borders on being an actual criminal offense. I hope they can identify who stole Eddy's Trackmania account and impersonated him via hardware ID, and help him retrieve the accounts, as in my conversation with him, he seemed really eager to rediscover his childhood memories. And lastly, I hope Nadeo puts in stronger punishments for cheating, since it should be evident that enabling the worst offenders to compete with no suspension under new names only further propagates the problems in the community. The things I hope that you as a viewer remember from this video is not all the depravity, but the stories like Nico's, so that when you make mistakes, you can better identify the path that leads to the best outcome. And also that when you see hateful comments, they likely stem from hurt and insecure people, who try to hurt others as a way of dealing with their own deficiencies. The way you should deal with these things is not to write hateful comments back, and I urge everyone to stay civil and respectful to the players featured in this video. I will end with the announcement that I'm going to use some of the money this video makes to put up a cash bounty for the first player to drive a 1781 on the track Snow B1. For the past 2 years, the players in the Trackmania United Forever community have made a huge collective effort to try to repair the damage done by cheaters, by beating the cheated record on every official track legitimately. In the fall of 2024, there was only one cheated record left to beat, a 1781 by Riolu on the track Snow B1. Many of the best players got tantalizingly close with several 1782s, but before they managed to beat it, Eddy swept in and grinded to set the first 1781. Now that we know this record was driven by Riolu, it leaves me feeling that the legitimate players got snubbed from completing the project on their own, which they are absolutely capable of without his help. To reward the incoming achievement, I am putting up a $777 bounty to the first 1781 by a non-cheater. The requirements to enter are, perhaps unsurprisingly, that you have to verify your identity after setting the record, as well as live streaming the session and a few other rules. Full requirements can be found in my Discord. That's pretty much all for now. Now that this is off my chest, I will return to making videos that I am passionate about and telling stories that inspire me, rather than internet drama. If you made it all the way here, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing the discussion in the comments. That's all for now. Until next time, have a good one.